Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker. If you're here, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Also, share this video with somebody, right? So we can get more subscribers, we can get into the algorithm, and more people can start really learning and understanding math. All right. We're about to do some geometry. And also, if you have any questions about anything I explain, please put your questions in the comment section. All right. Put your questions in the comment section. All right. If you got comments, put your comments in the comment section too. All right. Now, the topic we're covering today is arc length. Arc length. What does that mean? So if you look at this circle right here, right? If you break the circle down into parts, each of those parts is an arc. So from point F to point J, that's an arc. From point J to point C, that's an arc. From point C to point O, that's an arc. From point O to point P, that's an arc. From point P to point F, that's an arc. Those are all arcs. All right. Now, sometimes you got minor arcs and you got major arcs. A minor arc is less than 180 degrees. All right. In measurement. A major arc is more than 180 degrees. So a whole circle is 360 degrees. Half of that is 180. 180, a 180 degree arc is a semicircle. I believe a semicircle is also considered a major arc, right? So basically, any arc that's smaller than a semicircle is a minor arc. Any arc that's a semicircle or greater in size is a major arc, right? I need to look into that because maybe a semicircle is just, I don't know, maybe a 180 degree arc is just a 180 degree arc. I'm not sure. I need to look into that. All right, now, since I got my Cheney University hoodie on, right, where I've taught courses at since 2019, all right, I decided to create my points, right? The letters I use for my points represent some of the early founding educators at Cheney University when it used to be called the Institute for Colored Youth before it moved out to Chester County, right? I believe it's in Chester County. It's either Chester County or Delaware County, one of them two counties, right? And when it was in Philly, in South Philly, right, in the P, as they call it now, right, near I think near 9th and Bainbridge, right, in South Philly, when it used to be down there, when it was the Institute for Colored Youth, right. The principal was Fannie Jackson Coppin, who I believe Coppin State University out in Baltimore on North Avenue. Is it on North Avenue? Near North Avenue. Yeah, it is on North Avenue. Yeah, part of the campus is on North Avenue. Yeah, so Coppin State University is named after Fannie Jackson Coppin, to my knowledge. All right. Also, there was a brother that taught at the Institute for Colored Youth, now known as Cheney University, who also has there's a statue of him outside City Hall in Philly, in Center City, right? Named Octavius Cato. Octavius Cato was one of my inspirations that made me want to teach at Cheney in the first place because he was a math teacher. He was a math teacher. He was a political organizer. He was an orator. He was a baseball player. He played baseball for the Philadelphia Pythians. It was a club team. He would play against Frederick Douglass's son, who played for a team down in D.C. And when they would link up to play games, they would strategize about, abolition work, right? Because Cheney was founded in 1837. So in Philadelphia in 1837. So this is why chattel slavery is still legal and still going on. This is all before the Civil War. Octavius Cato also shared stages with Frederick Douglass to try to recruit black men into the Union Army to fight for the end of chattel slavery, right? So Octavius Cato did a lot, right? Ended up being assassinated in 1870, I believe, after the 15th Amendment was passed. Assassinated by some punk white boy from South Philly, who ended up getting acquitted, right? We know that story, all too familiar, right? But anyway, a lot of history around Octavius Cato, a lot of history around Fannie Jackson Coppin, a lot of history around Cheney University, right? Formerly known as the Institute for Colored Youth. All right. So now that's why I picked those letters for these points, right? As a constant reminder. Now, where's the S and the P? S and P, South Philly, right? Cheney used to be in South Philly, right? Also, the S could stand for South, the South in South Carolina, because Octavius Cato was born in South Carolina. His father was a preacher. His family migrated to Philly when he was a young boy. All right. Now, what are we doing? This is about arc length. If the circle has a radius of 15 centimeters, find the arc length. It's underlined, so you know that's going to be important information. Find the arc length. Here, we're trying to find the arc length of the major arc, FOJ. Major arc. How I know it's a major arc when it's written? Because it's got 3 letters. Major arcs have 3 letters in their name. FOJ, that's 3 letters. So put that in your notes. When you see 3 letters, you know it's a major arc. You know it's going to be more than 180, right? You know that, right? So that means you're not doing. It's not going to be just from point F to point J, because that's not a major arc. That's not more than 180. That's not more than a semicircle. It goes from point F through point O all the way to point J. So that also tells you which direction do you go. Do you go this direction? No, because you need to start at F and O needs to be the second point you hit. If I go this way, I'm gonna hit J first and then I'm gonna hit O. That might be FJO, but that ain't FOJ. In order to get FOJ, I got to start at point F and go this direction because I don't want to hit J first. So I go this direction, I go past O and all the way around to point J. So basically, this arc is covering the whole circle except for this piece right here. Think about it. This arc goes from point F all the way around, past O, past C. Now, you might be wondering, well, how come P not in the name? How come C not in the name? Because it don't matter. If it's a major arc, you only need 3 letters. 3 letters. If I'd have said FPJ, it would have been the same arc. If I'd have said FCJ, it'd have been the same arc. You just got to have, if it's a major arc, you just got to have 3 letters. The starting point, the ending point, and one of the points in between. It could have been FPJ, FOJ, or FCJ. It don't even make a difference. But that's part of the language of math. That's part of the language of geometry that you got to know. So I just put you on. I just told you. That's how you name arcs, right? Especially if you're dealing with a major arc. All right, so look, what you got to do in order to figure out arc length is 2 pieces of information you need to know. Number one, you need to know, and not necessarily in this order, but you need to know the circumference of the whole circle. What is the circumference of a circle? The circumference of a circle is the length around a circle. That's what circumference is. It's the length around a circle. It's not the space inside the circle. That would be the area, right? The number of squares that can fit adjacent to each other with no space in between, right? That would fill up this circle and pieces of them. Because when you get around to the edges, you're not going to be able to fit whole squares. You're going to have to break them up into pieces, right? But how many of those squares would there be all together? That's the area. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the length around the circle, the circumference. There's a formula for that. Since we know the radius, we should use the formula 2 pi r, right? Instead of pi d. So we're going to say C is equal to 2 pi r. That's our formula that we use to find the circumference of any circle. C is equal to 2 pi r. All right. Now, that's the first thing we're going to do. Then we got to find, after we find the circumference, then we got to find the arc measure of the arc that we're looking at. We're looking at arc FOJ, right? The major arc FOJ from point F all the way around past O to J. What's the arc measure of that? Arc measure is in degrees, right? It's based on the central angles that create the arcs. So arc FP is based on the measure of this angle right here, right? Arc PO is based on the measure of this angle right here, right? And there's a way we could figure that out, right? I left out a piece of information. I did the same thing the last time I did a problem that was related to this diagram, right? But we were looking for a different arc though. So this should be 26 degrees, right? That's key information. And you know what? I'm gonna erase this because it looks sloppy. It's not horizontal. You know what I'm saying? C equals 2 pi r. That's better. I can see in the camera. Yeah, that's better. C equals 2 pi r. Yeah, I got a thing for just sloppiness. I don't like it. Anyway, C equals 2 pi r. All right. So we're gonna figure out the circumference. We're also going to figure out what the arc measure of this arc is, FOJ. And then we're going to figure out what fraction that is of the whole circle's arc measure. The whole circle's arc measure is 360, right? A whole circle has a measure of 360 degrees. All right. So let's go ahead and let's find the circumference. So 2 pi r, that's 2 times 3.14 times the radius. What's the radius? 15 centimeters. All right. Now, I did a problem like this a little earlier. I took out my calculator. I did 2.3.14. That gave me 6.28. And I took the 6.28 that was still in the calculator. I multiplied that by 15. It gave me 94.2. So that means that the circle has a circumference of 94.2. 94.2 centimeters. That's my circumference. That's not my final answer. That's not my final answer. I'm going to use that to get my final answer. I just want to know the length of the arc FOJ, right? This is the length of the whole circle, but I don't want to know the length of the whole circle. I only want to know the length from this point all the way around until this point. So it's basically the whole circle minus this piece right here. So the question is, how do we figure that out, right? One way to do it is because it's options. We got options, right? When we're doing math problems. One way to figure it out is this. What we could do is we can find the arc measure of FOJ, right? By saying, okay, um, we want to know everything. We want to know the measure of everything in this whole circle except for this piece right here. Except for this piece right here, right? So how can I figure out what this piece right here is? If this arc is 26 degrees, I know something called the vertical angles theorem. Vertical angles theorem. Number one, what is a vertical angle? A vertical angle or vertical angles are two angles that share a vertex, right? The vertex is the meeting point where the two line segments come together that create the angle, right? The vertex is that meeting point. So this point S is a vertex. Vertical angles share a vertex, and they're on opposite sides of the vertex, and the segments that create them form an X. This segment and this segment form an X, right? So that means that now this arc is 26 degrees. That means this angle is 26 degrees. And if this angle is 26 degrees, follow me, right? Because this is how geometry helps you to develop critical thinking ability and problem solving. So if I know that this is 26, this is a vertical angle with this. Vertical angles are congruent. Put that in your notes. Vertical angles are congruent. That's their relationship. So whenever you see two vertical angles, whenever you see angles form, when you see an X form, right? Whether it's in some furniture or whether it's in some type of diagram or drawn on paper, you know those angles that are across from each other are congruent. So if this is 26, this got to be 26. And if this angle is 26, then this arc got to be 26. So now, if the whole circle, now let's think, let's use our brain real quick. Again, critical thinking, that's the purpose of geometry. That's the purpose of math. So when you're sitting in class, if you're a student, teenager, child thinking, why I got to learn this? What we got to know this for? It's to develop you to be a critical thinker. So you don't be out here looking stupid out here in the streets, right? A lot of people just be out here just dumb, getting taken advantage of every day and don't even know it because they don't know how to think. You need critical thinking skills. I'm trying to tell you, you need critical thinking skills. Ain't nothing cute about being dumb. Ain't nothing cool about being dumb. Like real talk, right? So when you're sitting in that math class, pay attention because that's how you develop your critical thinking skills and your problem solving skills. A lot of us don't know how to solve problems just in everyday life. I ain't even talking about in math class. I'm talking about in everyday life. Walking outside on the block, getting to a situation, don't know how to solve a problem, right? You can practice problem solving in math class. You might not believe me, but I know what I'm talking about. I ain't telling you what I think. I'm telling you what I know. All right. So look, this is 26. Now all the way around the whole circle is 360. But we only care about the part from F all the way around to this point. So if that part is 26, then what does the rest have to be? 360 minus 26. 360 less that 26, or take away that 26. That should make sense because the whole thing is 360, but we don't want the 26 degree part. That means take it away. Use subtraction. Elementary school math. What's 360 minus 26? Do 360 minus 20. That's 340. What's 340 minus 6? 340 minus 6 is 334. So that means that the arc measure for the arc we're looking for is 334. So you got to represent that as a fraction out of 360 because 360 is the whole circle. So that means what you do is this, right? You write that down. Represent it as a fraction. 334 over 360. That is the fraction that represents the arc measure, not the arc length. Don't confuse arc length with arc measure. Arc measure is an angle. Arc length is a length, right? That's how long it is. Arc measure is a degree measure, right? It's how wide the central angle is that subtends the arc. That's what that is. That's something different. Arc measure and arc length ain't the same thing. All right. So this right here is the fraction that this arc measure is out of the whole circle. So it's 334 out of 360. If you forgot how I got 334, hit that rewind button, run it back, right? And watch my explanation where I got the 334 from. Because the whole circle is 360. We figured out that this piece is 26. This arc is 26 degrees measure. Subtract that from 360, and you left with 334. That's where the 334 came from. And whenever you're doing any math problems, whenever you're watching somebody do a math problem, always make sure you know where every number they write down or talk about came from. If you don't know, that's the time to raise your hand and advocate for yourself. Don't be sitting in class like just not saying nothing, just copying everything down. You'll be sitting there, don't know, have no idea what they're writing on their paper and think, oh, well, I'm gonna get participation points because I'm gonna look busy. I'm gonna look like a good student. How you a good student? You don't know what you're talking about. You don't even know what you're writing down. You need to raise your hand. The good student, that's what a good student does. They raise their hand and say, excuse me, can you tell me where that 334 came from? Excuse me, can you tell me where that 94.2 came from? Excuse me, where does 15, this 3.14, and this 2 come from? Right? That's what you do when you don't understand something. Raise your hand and advocate for yourself. That's what that's called. Advocate for yourself. All right, now look. So you take this fraction, right? You multiply it by the circumference of the whole circle. The whole circle, right? Oh, they partying around the corner. Boots on the ground. Okay. All right, so now 334 divided by 360. So now I'm going to grab the calculator. I could reduce this, but I'm not even going to do all that. I'm going to just grab my calculator. 334 divided by 360. It's probably going to be 0.9 something. Yep, there you go. 0.92 and a whole bunch of sevens. So 0.9277. And then I'm going to multiply it by 94.2. And I get 87.396, which is 87.4, because the 9, you got to know how to round also. You got to know how to round. The 6 is going to make that 9 go up, but the 9 can't go up without the 3 going up. The 3 got to go up. So 87.396 turns into 87.4. So that means that from this point all the way around the circle to that point is 87.4 centimeters. 87.4 centimeters. Now, ask yourself, why does that make sense? That seems legit. You know why? Because all the way around the whole circle, from point F all the way around back to point F, is 94.2 centimeters. And isn't point F to point J almost all the way around? So therefore, it should be the length should be almost 94.2. And isn't 87.4 close to 94.2? Like $87.40 is close to $94.20, right? Exactly. Exactly. So this answer makes sense. And that's how you find arc length. That's how you find arc length. You got to find the circumference of the circle, right? You got to find the circumference of the circle, right? Use this formula, or you can use pi d. If you had the diameter, you could do pi times the diameter. You could do it that way too. You still gonna get 94.2. It don't make a difference, right? And then you got to find the arc measure. So once you find the arc measure, the arc you're looking for, in this case, the major arc, not minor arc, major, not minor, right? Major arc, FOJ, right? And there's different ways we could have did it. Like you could have figured out what this angle was, added it to that one, plus that one, plus that one. But I said, nah, let's not go through all that. We know the whole circle is 360. And if we figure out what this arc is, we could just subtract that from 360. And whatever we left with is everything else. Again, critical thinking, using our brains. We just practiced critical thinking. That's a life skill. Again, when you sit in class and you listen to your friends and they talking about, wow, I got to learn this. I don't need this. I'm never going to use this in life. People that don't have critical thinking skills, their life is rough. Their life is rough. I'm here to tell you, your life is rough. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. Sometimes they don't even realize it. Or they might attribute their life's challenges to something else. And of course, there are a lot of contributing factors. But one contributing factor is always going to be not having critical thinking skills. So you want to develop critical thinking skills. So algebra 1 class, algebra 2, geometry, pre-calculus, stats, all those math classes will help you to develop critical thinking skills so you can know how to use your brain, how to figure stuff out, and also have problem solving skills so you can know how to use your brain and figure stuff out. That's what the math class is there for. Yeah, sure. Like if you're good at math, maybe you can go to college and major in a STEM discipline. That's cool too. You can get a job. It's going to be plenty of jobs in STEM, right? Especially with AI taking over. You know what I'm saying? That's great too. But just generally, just knowing how to be a problem solver, knowing how to be a critical thinker is key. That's what you want. And if you're a parent watching this, that's what you want for your kids. You want for your kids to have critical thinking ability. You want them to develop those skills. So have them pay attention in math class and let them watch these videos so they can learn some math, right? And then go to school and practice what they already know. All right. So yeah, so find the circumference, then find the arc measure, set it up as a fraction out of the whole circle, which is 360. Arc measure for the whole circle is 360. Arc measure for the arc we was worried about is 334. Multiply that fraction by the whole circle circumference, which is 94.2. And that gives us our answer. The length of that particular arc, 87.4 centimeters. All right. So if you ain't hit the like button yet, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. If you still got questions, that's cool. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. I want you to ask more questions, more and more and more and more. Ask more questions, right? On this channel and also in your class. Ask questions, all right? So drop your questions in the comment section. If you got comments, put your comment in there, all right? You know what I'm saying? Also, share this video with somebody. Do your research on Cheney University and other HBCUs, Octavius, Cato, and Fannie Jackson Coppin. All right? And Cheney, when it was Institute for Color Youth, used to be located in South Philly. Peace.